You are a storyteller. So, as a creative, telling your brand story, especially if you're raising capital, is not that hard. And in this video, I'm gonna prove it to you. We're gonna jump in straight into a potential structure for what the deck might look like. Not many visuals for you to look at, just structures and things that I want to talk to you about, especially the concepts that we've observed if you watch my video about breaking down the Chamberlain Coffee investor pitch deck. If you haven't seen this video, check it out afterwards, or go check it out first, come back to this one, and it will make sense in terms of what I'm trying to articulate, because the structure for many good investment decks is pretty simple. It goes through these kind of like 8 specific subjects. Each section can be a single slide, it can be multiple slides, it can be a document that just outlines all of this in text, whatever the vibe and the style of the investor you're targeting. And we're going to talk in a couple of videos about the type of investments you're going to face. But depending on the type of audience that you face, you're going to tweak a little bit the format that you're delivering, very similarly to how you do it for your viewers. If it's a short form viewer versus VOD viewer versus a stream viewer, if you're an online viewer, or if it's like a photo, audio podcast, right? Like different audiences, different strokes for different folks. Same goes for the presentations when it comes to the investment thesis, but the sequence itself pretty much always stays the same. As you can see, there's like 2 different initial paths that can take. And the first path can be you start talking about the market, you go talk about the problem, you talk about the solution, or you can go straight into the problem, talk about the solution, and give some specifics about the market. The key difference between either of these 2 paths, kind of like this fork in the road, is whether the person who you're pitching to really understands the industry or not. If this is the first time, they're investing to your knowledge into the company of your type, say again, fresh on the heels of the coffee company, if you're selling coffee, or maybe let's make it tea to make it more interesting. You're selling tea. They're not a tea drinker, they've never sold to tea, like they never invested into the tea companies, but they're very interested in you. They're interested because of blah, 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 blah reason, and that's why you're in front of them. You might want to educate them first about the market. You can tell them, here's the size of the market, here's the types, here's what's interesting, and here's the niche that I'm in, and then here's the problem, here's the solution. If you're already talking to someone who've been around the block, they've invested to a bunch of companies of this type, they've spoken to a bunch of people like you can skip the market for the beginning, go straight into the problem that you're trying to solve for, here's my solution, and then give some context for the market size. But the idea is always like, again, pretty straightforward. People will try to make it seem complex. It's not. That's like a theme of this entire series about raising funds as a creator. It is not as complex as people will tell you it is. And so from the perspective of, let's start with the first part. If you need to talk about the market, really what you want to set the stage is as a good narrative is, here is the world that we're going to operate in. When you make a video, you always hopefully start with, here's the world, here's the situation, here's where I'm at, right? Like, and this is what it is. It's like, here's the size of the market, here's what it is, here's some of the competitors, maybe here's some of the things and key metrics, like it's $1 billion business, it's $1 billion industry, it's a $10 billion industry, what have you. From then on out, you can kind of want to like be reasonable, because mistake number 1, and I spoke about the mistakes that people make when pitching their businesses in one of my prior videos. One of the first mistakes, they're like, we're gonna cover the entire market, we're that good. No one is that good, not even Apples of the world. You're never going to fully corner the market, right? There's only going to be a small segment of it, and especially if you're a newcomer, it's going to be a very tiny segment of it. So you want to tell and say, like, even if it's $100 billion business, really we sell a very certain type of organic tea that grows in a certain region and people like to drink in a certain occasion. Boom. Small strip of it, right? If it's a pie chart, there's like a tiny strip of it, but it's a $100 million business. And so now it's more reasonable conversation. Okay, you're not trying to go after $10 billion business in the future, and the investor's mind will be like, we can get there. But from the perspective of where we are right now, this is the strip. It's a $100 million business, very reasonable. How do we get there? And that's when you start talking about the problem. So from the problem perspective, what you're really trying to talk about is there is an observed problem because there is a lack of gluten-free vegan tea that's specifically used in a certain type of scenarios by this audience, and I know how to get there because I have specific supplier. I like really mastered the art of growing that tea, or blah blah blah, any other reason, right? Like, apply to your niche. Why is a differentiator you or your brand? The idea is that they should be a tangible problem. It's always hard to pitch someone for the investment being a solution to a problem that is yet identified. Like, I'm solving for the power consumption of quantum computers. I'll be like, dude, that's awesome, but how many quantum computers are out there right now? Like 3? For the major corporations, they got it, right? Like it's not a market. You're probably like 10, 20 years too early. If on the contrary, it's like, no, it's actually very real. It's like, here's the problem. There's this very specific tool and it's missing. And it's like, maybe it's an auto shops. All the auto shops have to like use these 3 types of wrenches. I came up with the idea of how to create a single wrench that uses those 3 cases, simplifies the capacity of the number of storage they need, simplifies the usage, makes them faster. On average, they can, fix 5 more cars per day. Okay, now we're talking. Now it's an interesting problem. There's some tangibles to it. And it needs to be coherent and easy to explain. And that's where, like, if a person never heard about the market, as you talk about the market, you kind of want to drop some of those hints in. It's like, if it's a car, auto shops, they're so small, real estate is so expensive, cars are expensive to fix, so you don't want to add too much cost to your customer. So you want to keep those costs down. And here's the tool, right? When you talk about the problem and solution. So you kind of want to create those narrative bits and pieces, something I spoke a lot about when we were going through the Chamberlain Coffee deck. You can kind of like see how they would drop the narratives early on talking about the market that further down echo through the entire deck. And it's very similar. You kind of like drop some hints. It's like, hey, there's some things that are happening. Here's the real problem that's happening. And by the way, here's how I'm going to solve it. And the solution is really kind of like, again, it needs to be something tangible, easy to explain, easy to articulate, whether you know the market pretty well. So you definitely want to make sure they don't call BS on what you're trying to tell them, right? It's because they'll know the market, they'll be able to very quickly see through any lies or like lack of logic. But if they're new, you want to educate them, make sure they're comfortable, they not feel like you're throwing at them something super technical that they're not in a place to articulate or discuss with maybe some of the folks who are giving them the money to invest, right? From that perspective, always keep it simple, always keep it straightforward, never throw too many jargons, if especially the new person. Educate them enough, make sure they understand where they are. So set the stage, talk about the problem. Again, something you should be very commonly aware of when it comes to making videos, and then place a solution against it, right? So that's almost like your own mini 3-act arc in that storyline when it comes to beginning of the presentation, when talking about the investable business that you're about to create. Now, from there, once you set the stage, you had your small chapter, season 1, episode 1, whatever it is, 3-act arc. Now we're talking about the next 3-act arc, which is your go-to-market proof of concept financial projections. Go-to-market, in the simplest terms, it's how you go to market, how you sell, how you promote, right? Very straightforward. And I'm being very animated about it because it can be very boring topics to talk about. But I love go-to-market. It's a fun subject because it's actually, if you peel a couple of layers in, it's like, how do we sell things? Like, who do we sell it to? Where do we sell it, right? Like, you have to have those answers baked into your conversation. For example, it can be, we're going brick and mortar, so we need physical locations. We're going to sell it. We need to partner with Starbucks. We're going to sell in the Starbucks. We need to partner with a bunch of like Ace hardware stores, if it's using an example of that, like a unique 3-in-1 range. Right, there can be different ways by which you can start selling product. Oh no, it's digital. We're going to build a website. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And by the way, we did some testing and we know how it's going to work. Another way. Oh, we're going to go and like door to door knock on everyone's door and we're going to sell it this way. Probably not a scalable business. Not very interested, right? And the whole idea is that you want to explain how you envision promoting the product, selling the product, and potentially supporting and renewing that product, right? So some key high levels, you don't have to take them deep unless it's like something really they're asking about. Be prepared for the deeper conversation, but be able to articulate very quickly like, hey, this is going to be this wrench. It's going to be very specific for those things because those people usually buy at Ace Hardware and whatever, your local car manufacturing shop, Home Depot, whatever it may be, AutoZone. We're going to go and place it in them. And this is how we're going to do it. It's like, hey, do you have the relationship? If you don't, how do you plan to pitch it to them? What's the process of pitching to them, right? Like, you need to show that you understand what it's going to take you from the idea and the product in your hands to promotion and actually having people be aware of the brand to the point of like, hey, here's where you buy it, right? The point of sale. This is your go-to-market in a nutshell. You help them walk through the process of how would a viewer or a potential customer go from the point of their awareness to really being and liking the product to the point they're actually going to buy it, right? And you can make it very complex or very simple. You can keep it as simple as those points, or you can say, hey, because I'm very good and like I have a bunch of like whatever, million people who are all people working in auto shops who watch my content, distribution and initial awareness solved. I don't have a website. I need to build a website, and this is why I'm raising the money because I'm going to go hire a couple of professionals. We're going to build an amazing website. We're going to do this, and this is why it's not going to be Shopify, blah, 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 blah. So you can start talking through those points. Long story short, it's all about showing those 3 steps: how you get from the awareness to like the desire to be to convert to actual conversion, how you sell it, deliver, and service it. So you kind of like get through that point of the go-to-market strategy. And again, you can explain it on a single slide. You can explain it through multiple different pages. Proof of concept is the idea is that if you put it all in front of me, and if it's especially the new type of product, whether I'm aware of the industry or not, I'd be curious to know why you think this is a great idea. Like, what do you think millions of people are going to be interested in buying this thing? And this is where proof of concept is important. It can be based on just a few handful of examples. Maybe you came up with this, you're like, hey, this, again, I'll keep using wrench because it's an interesting example. It's like 3-in-1 wrench. I came up with it. I came to a couple of auto shops and I just handed it over to those people. And they took it and started using it and they were like, oh my God, this is great. Can you go help me get rid of, because I don't need all these other tools. And you have testimonials and maybe even video about the people using it in action. They're like, oh my God, this is mind blowing. This is amazing. This is going to change the way I repair the cars and going to make me so much more efficient. Boom, proof of concept testimonial. It can be, if it's like, say, maybe a digital product and you sold it actually on your website and you did a small test. You created something and it was very minor and it was specifically maybe lighter version of the product that you're trying to build towards, and it sold like hot cupcakes, right? It's like everyone wanted them. We sold out immediately. We didn't know what to do about it. People kept asking for more. Proof of concept, testimonials, boom, 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 boom. You show now the story about, hey, remember we spoke about the market, we spoke about the problem, we have a solution, and by the way, here's how we prove that this solution actually works and people are desiring, and they're like knocking on our doors trying to get us to open more sales to them. This is the kind of story you're trying to tell. You're trying to show them that there is something there, and it can be initial tests, it can be some actual market, kind of like testimonials and conversations with the potential customers. Like 3-4 testimonials with the right customers can be enough without a single sale. Sales are always amazing. Those are the easiest one because you can start talking about financial assumptions. We're going to talk in a second. But if you don't have those, a couple of testimonials, you're talking to a few potential customers, having them on a video, having them kind of like written with their logos and the companies, and all those details kind of like outline, will give that proof of concept. If you don't have them, it's going to be a little bit of a tougher conversation. Again, it might be okay if the person is really familiar with the market and it will click with them if they like run a bunch of Photoshops without even seeing testimonials. They'll already be like, I know this problem. I know this solution, so I know it's going to work, or at least we assume it's going to work, and I believe in your assumption. And this is why it's important. Ideally, again, sales, that's the best one if you ran like a small pilot where you sold a bunch of those things. Testimonials with like some recorded facts, names, logos of companies is a great backup version, even if it's like 3 or 4 of them instead of having sales. And the worst case, you can go about and saying like, hey, we assume because we really understand the market. A little bit of a tougher conversation to have with the investor. They always like the data. The more data you can provide that shows that, hey, people are going to knock the doors off this store when we go live, is the best way to kind of like provide the proof of concept. And that will naturally lead you to the conversation about the financial projections. Okay, now, how does this all stack up? And if you're asking me for $1 million, how am I going to get that $1 million back? In the next video, I'm going to have the entire conversation about how you actually build the financial model. But here, the whole idea is you want to tell them, hey, I'm going to take this X number and I'm going to turn it into this XYZ number, right? And the whole process here can be as complex as, again, the financial model that you're going to walk them through and say, like, here's my views, here's my conversions, here's how I'm going to make money, here's how much it's going to cost me, and here's how much we're going to make. And by the way, at these multiples, blah, 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 here's the enterprise value of this business. More on this in the next video. Specifically for a simplest scenario, it can be like, hey, we understand the market now. We know that there's a slice. We know it's a big problem. We know that on average, conservatively, we can probably sell it to like 5% of those auto shops. And at 5% conversion, and there's like million of auto shops, it's about 50,000 sales, and each sale will be like $100. All of a sudden, we're looking at like, 5 million, right? A $5 million revenue potential in the first year. Okay, now as an investor, you grounded me. You set the stage for where I might be, and then we can debate assumptions. We can say, okay, that's cool for the first year, but if I give you that million, you'll probably be able to go and expand to more auto shops and sell it to more people, and that 1 million or 5 million revenue in the first year can turn into $20 million 3 years, 4 years from now. Okay, now I'm clicking at a certain multiple. As an investor, I can start thinking about the enterprise value for this business. Okay, if we're gonna go and then 4 years from now sell it to someone, I might make 10x on my money. Cool. right? So this is what you're trying to set the stage for. You're trying to show them realistically, if you're addressing certain sliver of the market, that's where you talk about the market first and the problem, and you know that percentages of this problem across those people will probably be X number, so it's addressable market that you're facing, and you're going to convert on like 5%, 10% of it, 3% of it, a certain revenue number will be the expectation. And that's your rough financial projections. Honestly, it can be as simple as that. You can just list out and have those metrics like, here's the total size of the addressable market, here's how many people will convert to, here's how much on average they're going to pay. Boom, this is my revenue. It can be more complex in the financial model that we're going to talk about next week. And then at that point, you have this kind of like next chapter, next episode, next season, your 3 arc storyline of saying, okay, we kind of like helped you understand these 3 arcs. Now we talk about the go-to-market. Here's how we're going to sell, promote, blah, 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 blah. Here's how we proved already the concept that this go-to-market will work and why people are interested. And here's how the financial projections stack up. And at this point, honestly, ignoring the rest of the presentation, you're in great shape. If you have those narratives, if the investor's really clicking, they're not calling BS on anything, you really kind of like did your homework and you made sure you tested the assumptions, showed it to a few other people, they kind of like, gave you some critical feedback, you're in amazing shape. The next 2 parts are kind of like icing on a cake, in my opinion. You can talk about the team you have it, or you can talk about the ask and the deployment of investment, which the reason I'm saying it's like optional, it will be likely mentioned somewhere here already. If not, you can just overemphasize it here at the very end. But the idea is that from a team perspective, if you have certain people who are professionals in that space, maybe the person who you're working with is like expert in tool building and they work at like Haas Instruments or something like this, and they're like really get it. Cool. That's a cool name to have on your list and that presentation to say like, hey, it's not just me as a creator who thinks it's a great idea. This guy thinks it's a great idea, right? Similarly, if you have maybe other investors, friends and family, or maybe there's some other people who are like co-owning the business with you, this is where you put their names out there. And ideally, it's not just because they're cool name. I'll give you the example. If you, again, you're a car tool manufacturer, you have, and by the way, Gordon Ramsay is co-invested with me. Nice. I like the idea that you have Gordon Ramsay on your cap table, but how does it change the fact that this is a great tool? Because Gordon Ramsay probably knows jack about jacks and all the different tools that they use in the auto shop. So not really as impactful of a name. But if, again, the name is actually some sort of major, I don't know, owner of a bunch of different dealerships and car services, maybe you the co-investor is actual kind of like other tool manufacturing company that co-invested with you. So I was like, now we're talking. Now you're telling me, hey, as an investor, if I'm especially not super familiar with this business or this industry, but I see major names of major industry representatives from the space already investing in your business, that makes my job easier if I decide to invest for myself and it's my own money, or if I need to go and convince my investment committee and my company to tell them like, hey, I think this brand that is being built over here is a great brand, we should go and invest, and here's one of the supporting evidence that some of the biggest names in the space is also co-invested, let's go join them. So this is why it's important. And then the ask and the actual deployment of the investment, if you don't bake it somewhere further in the narrative, right, it's important to have it at the very end to emphasize this, to say like, here's how much money I need from you. I need this $2 million and here's how I'm going to spend them. And narratively, it should all tie back to your financial projections, to your go-to-market assumptions, to how you're actually going to go about converting on your proof of concept and this entire market problem. So example can be, I'm raising $1 million from you. I'm going to spend this $1 million on marketing, on building the infrastructure for the website, and maybe hiring a person to manage this entire thing. Cool. How we're going to do it? Oh yeah, because we now have the proof of concept, we have financial model, we understand these numbers. Okay, your $1 million that I'm going to give you right now will help you scale it from potential $1 million a year revenue business to like $5 million a year business, right? And again, we'll talk about it next week about all the multiples and all the fun stuff. But now in my head, if I know that these companies in this area sell at least 5 multiple valuation, if I get you to 5 million with my 1 million, that 5 million at a 10x multiple will actually be a $50 million company. And if with that million, you're going to give me like 10% of this company, I will own 10% of the 50 million. So it's a 5 million. Oh, cool. I'm going to 5x my money if we're going to sell it. I hope it makes sense. I know I ran through, replay it back again if you didn't get my math. But basically the idea is that that's the math they're going to be doing in their head immediately, or like somewhere on a piece of paper. Okay, I can see the path to me making 5, 10, 20x of my money. And this is why you want to be very specific about the ask, but also very specific about how you're going to invest. Because especially if I don't see the details as an investor and I'm like, oh, cool, you told me all this beautiful story, but you have zero clue how to apply this money, or you're going to tell me something stupid like, and then I'm going to go on a world tour and I'm going to make this bunch of videos and I hope they're going to convert. Let's pause there and talk about why it's a good or bad idea, right? You want to tell them very explicitly. One general rule of thumb that you should always adopt, words I live by: business and surprises never match. Never surprise your business partners, your investors, your colleagues. It should be zero surprises. Everyone should know about everything happening, multiple different scenarios at all times. When you do that, you're going to be in good shape. People are going to trust you. Even if some of those scenarios will fail, you continuously communicating and predicting and telling people what might potentially happen will put you in a better position than 95% of the individuals out there, because a lot of people kind of like fly by the seat of their pants and make a lot of assumptions that are not backed by anything. You want to be very explicit about the assumptions. You want to explain why they are, where they're coming from, narratively, why they think that matters. Because when it comes to asking for someone to invest business money in your business, you want to show them that you really thought it through and you know where this is going, so that even if it fails on its face, they will know like, hey, although this idea failed, I saw the assumptions. I saw how you're going to market. I saw all those details and I said yes, and I believed in your assumptions. So it's my fault as well for believing and being wrong on some of these assumptions. So guess what? Yes, the idea failed, but I trust you now because you went and you made that level of work. So I know next time around you're going to come to me and ask for money maybe for another business idea. I know I can trust you. And this is ultimately the most important thing. The amount of businesses that fail, even after successful investment, especially for the VCs, if every 10th investment really pays off, it usually covers for the other 9 that they lose money on. They're already fine with it. They never assume that that's going to be, they're going to be batting 1,000 and they're going to really get 100% of the investment back on every single deal. They assume that majority of them will fail. It's just a matter of building a trust with a potential startup founder, and you as a creator will be in that case if you're considering taking an investment. So you want to make sure you show them all of this information in a nice narrative and clean way. And at this point, the only other kind of like strategic, I guess more tactical advice I'll have for you is that when it comes to building out, especially if you are following the structure of slides and you're presenting all this information in like a 10 or so slides, and it is something I've kind of like learned over the years. McKinsey consulting companies famous for it, at least they used to back when I was working to a bunch of McKinsey partners, is that the whole idea of presenting this information is that always introduce the theme at the top. Like example can be if you're talking about the market, we have $100 million opportunity in this market. Boom. That's like you set the stage. Then you have the up to three assumptions that support it. The total global market is blah, blah, but really what we're going after is X%. And then within that X%, we have this blah, 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 right? Whatever they may be. But always introductory theme that just like, boom, sets them, like anchors them on a very specific theme. Quick 3 information data points to support that, so you really anchor them with that idea, and then all the rest of the information. The best way I can describe it for all the content creators out there, think of your intros. Think of your intros for your short form video, or really for your long form video. And remember this, there's this whole logic, and hopefully you follow it, right? There's this 6 second, 15 second, maybe 2 minutes, some metrics that some people say first 30 seconds, blah, blah, blah. The idea is that you always want to deliver that concise information, deliver on the click on the video within the first like 6 seconds. So if they saw a certain theme, they saw, hey, blah, 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 you're going to talk about this problem. Once they click within the first 6 seconds, you need to be addressing it in some way or another. Same thing here. In the first 6 seconds, you kind of like provide this level of information and ground them. Then in the next 15 seconds, you need to kind of like support and create a few branching narratives, potentially like reopen the loop, close some of the story loops, right? There are different methodologies on how you do it. But the idea, again, similarly here, you kind of like quickly open up maybe a couple of loops, so create a couple of data points to support the initial 6 seconds to tell them like, hey, I'm still talking about what I promised to talk about, and here's why it's important. Now, all of a sudden, they're interested in, their minds start going in several different directions. And by the way, here's all the rest of information to support this, right? If it's a size of the market, here's why we think this is a market, and here's all the information. If it's our financial assumptions, here's how much we think we're going to make. Here's the 3 key data points that we think are going to help us get there. And here's all the rest of the information. Same as when you think about the video, quick introduction, deliver on the click, support that click, provide the rest. Same here. Quick introduction to anchor them, support that anchor to dig them deeper, provide the rest of the information. As simple as that. Whenever you talk about these business problems, never start with open-ended like, it was a twilight, and we were walking down the hills of blah blah blah. Investors, they hear sometimes, especially if you're like working at a VC company, you hear 300, 400, 500 pitches a year. So it might be you're not even the first pitch that day as a investor. The last thing you're going to pay attention to, if someone opens up, they talk about the market opportunity, and it's like a slug of information for the first 2 minutes. Very quickly, boom, anchor them, give them something interesting to be like, oh, wait a second, I did not think about that. Support it, build out from there. And then from the rest of it, kind of like repeat that, rinse and repeat this structure for every point that we discussed earlier, right? Like rinse and repeat, say it's a one slide per each section. Each one starts with a very like impactful, something eye-catching, data points, support it, provide more information, build it, build it, build it, build it, build it on top of that, and make sure the narrative follows. And this is kind of like, actually before I should be sharing, right? That's what I was referring to. I was talking about, hey, this is all the different stages, build out on all of them. Now, if you go, the final kind of like a few key takeaways, narrative, you're a creator, you understand how to build narratives, build that narrative. All of this is just storytelling at the end of the day. You're talking to people about why this brand is important, why there's a potential, how it's going to grow. Being straightforward and very specific in the other two items. Again, very simple. Unless you're very into some very complex topic and this is the person you're talking to, most of the people prefer to stay in a very general language, 12th grade, 5th grade language, right? Depending on the type of audience you're working with. Same here with the investor. Make sure it's straightforward communication. Don't try to look smart in front of them by throwing a bunch of jargon and like different abbreviations and specific industry terms that people might not be familiar with unless they're really, really deep into it. Keep it simple. Because when you keep it simple and you can articulate a very complex idea to like a 5th grader, in my opinion, and I think it's like one of those like common maybe philosophies, it's like it shows you that you understand the problem really well. If you can articulate a very complex topic to a very amateur individual within this area, you really understand the topic and you can translate it, right? Like, and this is important. And this is also one of those credibility factors that will show the investor, like, hey, this person actually gets it and they can easily articulate it to me without being super complex. You're not trying to look smart there in the sense of like, oh, I know so much. You're trying to look smart in the sense of I understand how we're going to make money together with this business. And then the specific ask and actions, again, from the respect of their time, from the respect that this is might be like multiple number 3, number 4 investment deck that they're hearing that day. Ensure that you're very specific. We talk through all of this. This is how much I need from you. This is how much it's going to do. Or if there may be like some additional asks of like, hey, and your company also provides the support, or you have other connections and blah, blah, I need something else from you. Always be specific, transparent, and upfront. Like, there's no need to hide it, and be like, I don't know if maybe you can give me 5 million, but maybe you can give me 10. Like, no, screw that. Be specific. I need this much money from you. This is how I'm going to invest. This is how we're going to make it together. If they don't like it, that's fine. But being straightforward and direct in the business is the way you're going to go far. And as I said, even if this business idea fails, even if people are not happy with the end result, they will be happy and respectful of you. And because in this world, something ridiculous, I'm forgetting the latest stat, but I think it was like 90% of the businesses fail anyway, you're going to be in a completely different stratosphere in terms of as a potential co-investor in the future, because they'll just trust you. They're like, this person is straightforward. They build a very easy to understand narrative. They were very straightforward with their ask. And even though I agree with them and the whole thing failed, I believe in them as an individual and I'm going to co-invest in them in the future. And this is the biggest thing for you, because you're going to hear a lot of no's. In this entire process, if you're lucky, you're going to get a couple of yeses early on. Otherwise, you might have to talk to like 100 plus people before you get a yes for the investment. But once you get that yes and you create the relationship with that investor, that relationship might last you 3-4 companies beyond this. So this is why it's so important. This is why that narrative, being straightforward and being direct with your asks, is so important, because it will show that they can trust you. And trust is ultimately what this entire world is built on when it comes to specifically the business. They need to be able to trust you as their partner, as someone who's going to reasonably go and deploy their funds and invest into something interesting. And this is why you talk through all of this in the deck presentation, file that you put together, whatever you decide to do. So I'll stop here. We're like, again, 30 minutes in. I'm always trying to keep it to 20 and I always go above 30 minutes. We'll see how the end cut ends up being, but I hope this was useful. This is, again, a lot of information, but it's very straightforward. People will tell you it's super complex. No, it's not. In the next video, we're going to talk about specifics of the financial projections and talk about financial modeling. Again, we're going to keep it very simple, but we'll show you kind of like the depth to which you can go, starting with very simple things. Similar to here, you do the narrative work, you do the, communication of ideas. You know how to do it already, just you do the same thing for the brand with a few more data points, unless you're already using a bunch of data points in your videos. So again, hope this was useful. Let me know in the comment section below if you have other questions, follow-up things, other subtopics, maybe deeper dives on some of these areas that you would want me to talk through. Otherwise, next week we're going to talk about financial projections and financial modeling, and I'll see you next Saturday. Peace.